One late-night pizza delivery turned into the creepiest date she'd ever have. To hear more stories like this one, be sure to like this video, and subscribe to Story Blend. To be the first to hear these stories, click the notification bell, and we'll let you know the moment we have a new story to tell. A dangerous profession. Only a crazy person would go up to a stranger's doorstep in the middle of the night, right? Well, there's one job that requires its employees to do just that, delivering pizza. These poor pizza delivery drivers have no idea what they're walking into and, more importantly, who's on the other side of the door. One Reddit user remembers a terrifying customer like it was yesterday, and it's amazing she's still around to tell this tale. 6 years ago, due to unfortunate circumstances, poor female pizza delivery driver, Amelia, endured the most terrifying night of her life. A whole new shift. The then 20-year-old Amelia was thankful to start off working the late morning to mid-afternoon shift, where the sun was shining and the freaks were sleeping in. Working at one of the most popular pizzerias in her area, she was definitely kept busy. However, one coworker just had to call in after having a rough night before, which set off a catastrophic chain of events. The idiot got fired after losing his license because of drinking and driving, leaving the dreaded night shift wide open. Unfortunately, Amelia was forced into taking on the task after her pain-in-the-you-know-what boss, Jerry, hired a family friend who could only work her original shift. Despite her constant pleas to not work at such a sketchy hour, her boss told her it was either the night shift or expulsion from the job. Sadly, Amelia needed this job to make ends meet and started driving during the late hours of the night. Everything was fine for about the first month, but then one day, a house barely within their delivery radius made the call that would change this delivery girl's life forever. One fateful night. When Amelia punched in the address on her GPS, she found that the house was located in a pretty suburban part of the city. She arrived at 11 p.m. at the quiet, but decently lit, neighborhood. The area was littered with mostly modern townhouses, but the doorstep this delivery girl would have to walk up to was an eerie duplex. When Amelia rang the doorbell, there was no answer at first. After waiting an awkward 30 seconds, she rang the doorbell again and started shifting around uncomfortably. Even after the second doorbell ring, still, nobody answered the door. At this point, she felt very nervous and didn't know whether to ready herself for a dangerous situation or not. After what felt like forever, a fairly normal-looking, skinny mid-40s man opened the door. He basically towered over Amelia at around 6 feet, but she was just grateful someone finally opened the door. That is, until she tried to offer him the pizza. Something's not right about this guy. When Amelia told him his total, he simply stared at her. She didn't know how to react. It seemed like he was in some sort of a daze. Amelia asked if he was okay and he said, "Yeah, I'm fine, sorry. I got off work not too long ago and I'm zoning out a bit." She brushed off any bad vibes she felt about this weird dude and happily took his money. However, once she started making his change, he made an alarming statement. "You're really beautiful, you know that?" Again, Amelia decided to brush off the creepiness and just say thanks. She then wished him a good night and went on her way. Yet what Amelia failed to realize that night was that the man's small compliment would end up meaning so much more. "Hey, it's you again." A few days later, it seemed like any other night shift filled with deliveries when Amelia noticed that she had to go to the same house, exact same time too, with a zoned-out man. He's just another repeat customer, though, right? She approached the duplex once again and rang the doorbell, this time just once. The man immediately opened the door and seemed more than happy that his pizza, or should we say Amelia, had arrived. "Hey, it's you again. How are you?" Amelia made polite conversation and said she was tired and couldn't wait to go home after work. He chuckled and began to pull out his wallet, counting his money. He said, "I know that feeling pretty well." He then asked for her name, which probably should have been a warning sign, and because Amelia was genuinely exhausted, she didn't think twice and told him her name. He then asked for her number and said, "I'd love to hang out with someone as gorgeous as you." Finally, all of the red flags went up. So many red flags. Amelia paused a moment, not sure how to respond as scary thoughts ran through her mind. She's only delivered pizza to him, like, twice. They barely even know each other. Why is he hitting on her now? This guy looked like he could be her dad for goodness sake, and he should know that because she'd always been told she looked young for her age. Numerous people had even told her she still looked like she was 15. So, he wouldn't dare hit on a teenage delivery girl, right? She stumbled over her words and eventually spat out, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." The man's face soured a bit as he said, "Oh, okay. I see." You could have cut the awkward silence afterward with a knife. Amelia quickly muttered out a good night and headed back to her car. This time, he said nothing and simply watched as she walked away. She noticed he was just standing in the doorway, watching her, but once she started up her car, he disappeared back inside. Everything screamed creepy about this whole situation, but all Amelia could do, for now, was drive away and finish her deliveries. She'd get no sympathy from this jerk boss. Amelia brought up the creepy encounter with her co-workers, who also agreed this guy was an absolute weirdo and she needed to stay away from that duplex, maybe even the night shift in general. Mr. Jerk Boss, however, offered no sympathy and accused her of making up stories to get out of working nights. If only he'd listen. After that, weeks went by and everything was fairly normal and quiet until the pizzeria received the same call from the same duplex by the same freakish man. Amelia's heart instantly sank when she saw the ticket, though she'd never guess what would happen next. She should have turned around once she saw his suit. Amelia arrived at the creep's duplex at 10:30 p.m. and didn't see a single light on in his house. She bravely walked up the path, pizza box in hand, and as soon as she was close to the door, it swung open with the man standing dauntingly in the doorway. He wore a nice suit with an equally nice, creepy grin. Laughing, he said, "Sorry if I scared you. I saw you out the window and figured I'd just open the door now so that you wouldn't have to ring the bell." Amelia automatically felt creeped out. Why did he have all the lights out and just opened the door so suddenly as she reached it? Was he just sitting in the dark waiting for her to come? She tried to brush off the situation, laughing nervously, and told him it's okay. He then asked her, of all things, if she liked his suit. Strange. But she figured she'd pay him a compliment and told him that yes, she liked the suit. Big mistake. He said, "Would you like to go on a date with me tonight?" Amelia was absolutely stunned. What the heck? She was only there to deliver his pizza, not be taken out on the town. She reminded him of her boyfriend and hoped that it'd be enough to make him give up. But it wasn't. He said, "Honey, there's no way a girl your age is in a serious relationship. If you go on a date with me, I'll show you how a real man treats a girl." Amelia's fear was starting to grow, and the next few moments would prove to be the scariest experience of her life. He couldn't take no for an answer. Not taking no for an answer, the creep grabbed the pizza box out of Amelia's arms and tossed it to the ground. He then grabbed her by the arms, like he'd never let her go. Ever. Panic started to rise and Amelia was now forcing back tears. She pled, "Dude, please. I just want to go home. I don't want to go on a date tonight." With a sinister look, he said, "I don't care. Get inside now. We're gonna have a good time." Amelia realized she was not getting out of this horrifying situation without a fight and began to struggle to escape. She managed to get one arm free but instantly felt panic rush through her veins as he reached into his pocket. She knew she had to think fast, so she punched him hard in the stomach. Thankfully, this stunned him momentarily and made him loosen his grip on her, allowing Amelia to break free and make a run for it. Once she reached her car, though, he wasn't too far behind. It took all the fight she had in her body to escape. As Amelia was desperately trying to get into her car, the creep grabbed her again, and this time, he was holding a knife. "Why are you making this so difficult?" he yelled. Adrenaline pumping, Amelia grabbed a half-empty soda bottle she still had in her cup holder and chucked it at her attacker, luckily hitting him in the head, which made him again lose his hold on her. Amelia slammed the car door and with trembling hands, got her keys in the ignition. Yet right as she was about to pull out, the man suddenly jumped onto the hood of her car, scratching and banging on her windshield. Amelia floored the car into reverse and shot out of his driveway as fast as she could. Amazingly, and unfortunately, the creep held onto the car for dear life as she kept driving down the road. "Stop the freaking car!" he yelled from outside her windshield. Amelia knew she needed to get rid of him, and fast. As she reached the next road, she made a sharp turn like something out of the Fast and Furious, and, thankfully, he finally fell off the hood of her car. She sped off, leaving behind the lunatic who would have done anything to take her out on a very special date. A narrow escape. Still in a panic, Amelia drove for blocks, making turn after turn, until she reached a red light and slammed on the brakes. She was absolutely petrified and sat in her car in stunned silence as she waited for the light to change. The realization of what just happened slowly crept over her until she began sobbing so hard she was shaking. If things hadn't have worked out the way they did, this could have been her last night alive. She almost was kidnapped and died tonight. Those thoughts kept racing around her head. Once the light turned green, all she could do was pull over to the side of the road and continue sobbing. Finally, Amelia gained her composure after a few minutes and quietly made her way back to the pizzeria. As soon as she walked in, her co-worker Brian noticed something was definitely off. He asked her what was wrong and Amelia immediately broke down and told him everything. Brian was able to comfort and calm her down and, it turned out that, once again, Jerry was out of view listening to every word. Seeing her in this panicked state, he couldn't help but believe her this time and apologized profusely for making her stay on the night shift. He led her into his office and handed his phone over for her to call the cops. The truth started to come to surface. The police came to the pizzeria and Amelia gave her statement. She was still shaking as they took pictures of the marks he left on her body, along with the scratches on her car. Once they gathered all they needed, Brian followed closely behind her as she drove back home, and, surprisingly, she was able to fall fast asleep. Amelia decided that her terrifying encounter was the last straw, and she quit her job as a pizza delivery girl the next day. She then waited 2 whole days before the police contacted her again and gave her an update. It turned out the entire duplex was owned by the freak's brother who lived on the right side with his wife, while his psycho brother lived on the left. His name was Sullivan Myers and he had a dark, twisted past. He was in and out of jail constantly, at first for robberies and such, but later on for more intimate crimes. In fact, he'd just been released from jail about 5 months before that fateful night. When the police arrived at his house, he was long gone and none of his family knew where he'd run off to. The police were adamant about stopping this sick creep, though. For the next 2 months, Amelia anxiously awaited to hear more news, afraid that he'd somehow find her again and finish the job. However, fate had different plans. The nightmare was officially over. Amelia eventually learned that Sullivan had fled to a nearby city where he kidnapped a teen walking alone at night. Thankfully, someone noticed the weird altercation outside their window and called the cops immediately. The police were able to catch him red-handed trying to force her into his car. A police chase ensued, with Sullivan blowing through a red light near a busy intersection, where he slammed into a van. The driver of the van only had minor injuries, but as for the creep, his wounds were too great and he died long before the ambulance arrived. When the officers gave Amelia this final update, she thanked them for their time and hard work and walked out of the station. I walk down the street and I light up my smoke as I'm taking in everything I had just been told. I don't wish death on people, but after hearing about his death, I felt relieved. I felt relieved that he couldn't hurt anyone anymore. I was relieved that I would never have to encounter him ever again and that I couldn't have to go through with charging him and reliving what happened that night. This may not have been her only experience with creeps, but this encounter would stay with her for the rest of her life. She said, "Who knows where I'd be if he managed to pull me into his house." Thank you for listening. Let us know what you thought of this story in the comments below, and if you want to hear more stories like this one, like this video and subscribe to Story Blend.